Somewhere beneath the green canopy of southern Mexico, a city has been sleeping for more than 1,000 years. Not scattered ruins, not a handful of buried stones. A city, with pyramids and palaces, ceremonial plazas and carved monuments, a sophisticated water management system, and hieroglyphic inscriptions that nobody has read in over 12 centuries. A city that housed thousands of people at its peak, built with astronomical precision and governed by political systems that shaped an entire region and then simply abandoned. Swallowed by the jungle so completely that not a single road leads to it, not a logging track, not a footpath, nothing. For more than a millennium, it sat there in total silence, beneath a canopy so dense that sunlight barely reaches the ground, while the world moved on above it, completely unaware. And then, just weeks ago in June 2026, a laser beam changed everything. Archaeologists have uncovered a previously unknown Maya city hidden deep inside Mexico's Calakmul Biosphere Reserve. Named Minanbe, meaning there is no path in Yucatec Maya, the remarkably well-preserved settlement remained concealed beneath thick jungle for more than 1,000 years. What makes this discovery different from almost everything that has come before it is not just that the city exists. It is that it survived completely intact, untouched, unlooted. And the technology that found it is rewriting the rules of archaeology in ways that are still accelerating in July 2026, reaching from Mexico to the Amazon basin, to Cambodia, and beyond. Welcome to John's Global Guide, where we go past the surface and into the full story. Let's start with the technology itself, because before you can understand why Minanbe is so extraordinary, and before you can understand why 2026 has become one of the most consequential years in the history of archaeological discovery, you need to understand what LiDAR does to a jungle and why the moment it was first pointed at the rainforests of the world changed the science of human history permanently. LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. In its most basic form, it is a system that fires enormous numbers of laser pulses toward a surface from an aircraft or a drone and measures the exact amount of time it takes for each pulse to bounce back. From those travel times, the system constructs an extraordinarily precise three-dimensional map of whatever is below. The technology is not new. It has been used in cartography, geology, and engineering for decades. But what changed everything for archaeology was a specific application: the ability to digitally strip away vegetation from the map. With LiDAR, researchers removed the tree canopy from images, revealing the ruins of a vast pre-Columbian civilization, far more complex and interconnected than most scholars had thought. When you mathematically remove every return pulse that bounced off leaves and branches and keep only the pulses that reached the actual ground, what appears underneath is the shape of the earth itself. Every terrace, every road, every platform, every pyramid, every building footprint, every water channel. Structures that have been buried under centuries of accumulated leaf litter, root growth, moss, and decomposed organic material suddenly become visible in precise three-dimensional relief, as if someone lifted the entire forest and set it aside. The LiDAR images showed that the size of Maya settlements had been underestimated, according to archaeologist Thomas Garrison. Here was this vast jungle that everyone thought was nearly empty. And then, when the trees were peeled off, there were human signatures everywhere. That sentence is not rhetorical flourish. It is a precise summary of what happened to the scientific community's understanding of human history in the tropics. Once LiDAR was systematically applied to the forests of Central America, South America, and Southeast Asia. Results suggest that Central America supported an advanced ancient civilization. Previous studies had compared the Maya civilization to scattered city-states. Current research indicates that the Maya can be compared to sophisticated cultures like those in ancient Greece or China. LiDAR images revealed highways connecting cities and mining quarries. Complex irrigation supported intensive agriculture, with workers dramatically reshaping the landscape. The civilization beneath the jungle was not scattered. It was vast, interconnected, hierarchically organized, militarized, and engineered to a degree that rewrites the entire narrative of what was possible in the tropical lowlands of Mesoamerica. And yet, for all the LiDAR surveys conducted across Central America and southern Mexico in the last decade, the jungle was still hiding something that all the overflights and digital models had not yet fully reached. That something is Minanbe, and the story of how it was found and what was found inside it is the most complete and most extraordinary version of this entire archaeological revolution that 2026 has yet produced. The discovery was made by a Mexican-Slovenian team led by archaeologist Ivan Šprajc from the Research Center of the Slovenian Academy of Sciences and Arts. Hidden in a remote part of the state of Campeche, the site escaped modern disturbance thanks to dense vegetation and the absence of logging roads. The find is the latest result of nearly 30 years of archaeological work across the central Maya lowlands. Since 1996, Šprajc has identified more than 80 Maya sites across the largely unexplored central Maya lowlands of the Yucatan Peninsula. Among his discoveries are the nearby Maya sites of Chactun in 2013 and Okomtun in 2023. Minan Bay is the third major discovery in what is becoming one of the most productive research sequences in the Americas. The expedition focused on an area west of Chactun. Then, the team visited regions with promising LiDAR signatures between 2023 and 2024, but to no avail. The area hiding Minan Bay was the final candidate up for exploration. Thankfully, this time, the team struck gold, but not before they had to clear up roughly 3 miles worth of thick jungle growth, then walk up another 3.7 miles to reach the site itself. 3 miles of jungle cleared with machetes, then another 4 miles on foot. No road, no trail, no previously existing path of any kind. Compared with other places where we have conducted surveys, access here was much more difficult, Spreich said. However, in the last 3 years, this is the first site we have found completely intact with no signs of looting. It was a major surprise. Read that sentence carefully. The first completely intact unlooted site in 3 years. In a region where the problem of archaeological looting is so severe that many newly discovered sites are already known to looters before scientists arrive, finding a city that the physical inaccessibility of the jungle has protected from every human intrusion for over a millennium is not just archaeologically significant. It is almost miraculous. The very thing that made reaching Minan Bay such an ordeal is the thing that kept it pristine. The jungle's impassability was its security system, and it worked for over 1,000 years. Now let's talk about what the team actually found inside the city. Subsequent exploration confirmed the presence of a substantial urban center containing plazas, ceremonial structures, palatial buildings, terraces, and an extensive water management system incorporating wetlands and hydraulic channels. This is not a collection of isolated mounds. It is an organized urban space with the full range of architectural categories that characterize a functioning Maya city at the height of the civilization's power. Minan Bay's tallest building was a temple pyramid standing more than 40 feet tall, 3 or 4 stories. Vujanovic says it was built in the Rio Bec style, a type of Maya architecture characterized by fine masonry and moldings, popular during the late Classic period. The temple boasts a stela, a freestanding monument of carved stone. Finding a relatively well-preserved example of this style in an unlooted context is precisely the kind of find that allows archaeologists to study not just the form of Maya architecture, but the original materials, construction sequences, and the physical evidence of the people who built and used the space. This is the first time I have recorded a temple that is relatively well-preserved and still associated with a stela bearing glyphs, said archaeologist Vitan Vujanovic. Stelae, the freestanding carved stone monuments that served as the public historical record of Maya political authority, are frequently the first targets of looters, because their carved surfaces are among the most commercially valuable objects in the entire corpus of pre-Columbian art. Finding one in its original context, with its hieroglyphic text intact enough to be read, is the kind of discovery that reshapes what can be known about a city's history. Researchers identified part of a long count date on Monument 6 that may place it in the late 7th century AD, potentially making it the oldest dated monument found in the surrounding area. The discovery follows 3 decades of research, during which Spreich identified more than 80 Maya sites across the largely unexplored central Maya lowlands of the Yucatan Peninsula. The 723,185 hectare Calakmul Reserve is Latin America's second largest remnant forest after the Amazon. The reserve and the ancient Maya city of Calakmul are jointly inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. More than 500 archaeological sites of varying sizes have been identified there. The continuity of the vestiges in the region is such that it is frequently impossible to determine where one ancient community ends and another begins. Spreich tells the Art newspaper, 500 identified sites in a single reserve. And yet Minan Bay was unknown to science until June 2026. That fact alone tells you something fundamental about the density of human history concealed beneath these canopies. But the story of what LiDAR is revealing in 2026 does not stop at Minan Bay. It does not stop at Mexico. It does not stop at the Maya civilization. Because while Spreich's team was hacking through the Calakmul jungle in the spring of 2026, researchers on an entirely different continent were returning from the Brazilian Amazon with data that adds another dimension to the same revolution. According to recent reports from the University of Missouri, an expedition conducted by researchers Daniel Pierce and Christopher Badine returned from the Brazilian Amazon with new LiDAR data. Their scans revealed numerous massive geoglyphs, intricate geometric designs etched into the landscape, hidden deep within the jungle. While their exact cultural or religious significance remains under investigation, the findings add another layer to the growing consensus that current knowledge of the rainforest is only scratching the surface. Geoglyphs at this scale in the Brazilian Amazon. A completely intact Maya city in Mexico. Both discoveries emerging within weeks of each other in the first half of 2026. This is not coincidence. This is the product of a technology that keeps finding things every time it is pointed at a dense tropical canopy. Across every geography where ancient peoples built complex societies, and the jungle subsequently reclaimed what they left behind. The Amazon rainforest near Puerto Maldonado conceals ancient cities beneath its dense canopy. Modern laser scanning technology has revealed thousands of years of indigenous settlements and urban planning. Archaeologists mapped a network of ancient settlements in the Amazon using LiDAR, a laser scanning method that reveals human-made shapes under dense vegetation. The mapped structures included irrigation canals, raised roads, and ceremonial platforms, pointing to large organized communities that lived in the region more than 2,500 years ago. This was not one lonely ruin in the jungle. The mapped layouts showed straight streets, drainage canals, elevated mounds, and plazas, which suggests planning and shared rules for building. 2,500 years of urban planning in the Amazon. Straight streets, drainage canals, elevated mounds, and plazas. The kind of infrastructure that requires institutional coordination, long-term planning, and populations large enough to build and maintain it across generations. These ongoing LiDAR discoveries challenge the enduring myth of the Amazon as an untouched virgin wilderness. Instead, the region is increasingly viewed as a heavily managed cultural parkland, shaped and engineered by human intervention over millennia. That phrase, heavily managed cultural parkland, is one of the most consequential reversals in the history of anthropology. For centuries, the Amazon was described by Western explorers and scholars as a green hell, a hostile environment too challenging to support complex civilization, a place where only small nomadic groups could survive. For decades, academic narratives and explorer accounts characterized the Amazon as a region with nutrient-poor soil capable of supporting only small, isolated nomadic tribes. Monumental civilizations were widely believed to be non-existent within the basin. However, recent archaeological breakthroughs indicate that massive earthworks, previously mistaken for natural hills or minor indentations on the jungle floor, are actually the remnants of complex societal infrastructures, including pyramids and ancient superhighways. Ancient superhighways in the Amazon basin, pyramids previously mistaken for natural hills, infrastructure on a scale that only becomes visible from the air, through a technology that did not exist for practical archaeological use until the last decade and a half. In 1925, while exploring the remote jungles of the Amazon on a quest to uncover a fabled lost city, British explorer Percy Fawcett and his small expedition party vanished without a trace. Their goal was to locate an ancient lost city rumored to exist in the heart of the Amazon that Fawcett and others called the Lost City of Z. Fawcett was laughed at by much of the scientific establishment of his era. The consensus was that the Amazon could not have supported the kind of civilization he was searching for. His disappearance became one of history's most famous unsolved mysteries, and his quest was dismissed by many as the delusion of a romantic eccentric. But a century later, LiDAR has not just validated his instinct, it has revealed that the reality may have exceeded even his imagination. The reward is that we're finally finding the lost civilization that explorers like Percy Fawcett were searching for a century ago, says Jose Iriarte, who published a comprehensive overview of these discoveries in June 2026. The scale of what is now being documented in the Llanos de Moxos region of northern Bolivia specifically gives the full picture of what Fawcett may have been chasing. LiDAR surveys have revealed the presence of a sprawling archaeological site linked to what is called the Casarabe culture, which would have thrived in the area sometime between AD 500 and 1400. The Casarabe organized into a hierarchy of 4 different sizes of settlements, writes Professor Iriarte. The biggest ones, the primary settlements, were as large as 3 kilometers or 300 hectares. That's enough space for over 400 football pitches, Iriarte notes, suggesting that they could have accommodated substantial numbers of people. 400 football pitches. That is the footprint of a single primary settlement in a civilization network that the jungle kept entirely hidden from modern science, until lasers were flown over it from the air. And this is a society that had been described in the academic literature as a minor, regionally limited culture before LiDAR revealed its true scale. The University of Cambridge reports that scientists identified more than 60,000 previously unknown structures in Guatemala's Maya Biosphere Reserve alone. The Maya lowlands potentially housed 10-15 million inhabitants at peak capacity. The density matches medieval England, except compressed into a tropical jungle landscape. 10 to 15 million people in the tropical lowlands of Central America, at a time when most of Western Europe's largest cities held tens of thousands. Medieval England's population density replicated in the Maya jungle. That is the magnitude of what LiDAR has forced archaeologists to acknowledge about the ancient world's demographic reality in the tropics. LiDAR has unveiled extensive highway systems linking urban centers across hundreds of miles. These weren't simple walking paths, but engineered roadways elevated above flood zones, built wide enough for substantial traffic flow. The ramifications for understanding ancient trade and cultural interaction are enormous. Urban centers that appeared isolated were actually critical nodes in extensive commercial networks. Now let's return to Minanbe specifically, because there is a dimension of this particular discovery that the broader LiDAR conversation often misses, the political story encoded in the stones themselves. Researchers documented a total of 14 monuments, including stelae and altars decorated with iconography and hieroglyphic inscriptions. Some show evidence of intentional alterations, including a fractured altar depicting a ruler wearing a headdress and jewelry. This could indicate the incursion of groups coming from north of the peninsula during a later period, who altered the city's political symbolism. The deliberate destruction or modification of monuments is one of the most archaeologically legible signatures of political transition in the Maya world. When a new ruling power took control of a city, one of the most visible ways it asserted that control was by attacking the physical record of the previous authority, defacing stelae, breaking altars, erasing carved images of former rulers. The evidence of intentional modification at Minanbe suggests that the city did not simply fade quietly as the classic Maya collapse spread across the lowlands. Something happened there politically. A transition of power occurred, and the physical evidence of that transition is preserved at Minanbe in a way that no looter has disturbed and no modern development has obscured. As ongoing LiDAR surveys continue to expand across previously unexplored regions, archaeologists believe thousands more structures may still await discovery, suggesting that some of the rainforest's greatest archaeological secrets remain hidden but no longer kept entirely from view. The gift of the jungle's impassability is the gift of the complete record. The inaccessibility that made reaching Minanbe such an ordeal preserved not just the physical structures, but the full sequence of events they record. The story of what happened to the city in its final years, who lived there, who challenged their authority, what the transition looked like, how a community organized around agricultural production and ceremonial life eventually dispersed or was absorbed, all of that is still encoded in the stones, waiting to be read with patience and the right instruments. There is something else happening in 2026 that adds an urgent dimension to all of this, and it is not a story about discovery. It is a story about loss. We're running out of time because we're losing the Amazon, says archaeologist Chris Fisher, and we're going to lose things that we never knew were there. To me, that's a real tragedy. The Amazon is changing rapidly. Forests are being eliminated to promote farming, ranching, energy production, and the infrastructure that supports them. Many of the newly discovered sites are not new to looters. The state doesn't have the financial resources to protect our patrimony, says one researcher. Well, with the new data, we're at least figuring out where the sites are. The race between LiDAR discovery and jungle destruction is not abstract. It is happening right now, in July 2026, in real time. Sites that have survived 1,000 years intact are being threatened by the same forces that are reshaping tropical ecosystems globally. The technology that can find them is advancing faster than ever. The question is whether the institutional commitment to protect what is found can keep pace with both the discoveries and the destruction. LiDAR does not replace excavations. It highlights where to dig and what patterns to study next, saving time and making fieldwork smarter. As more areas are scanned, more invisible sites may appear, reshaping what is known about indigenous engineering, trade routes, and daily life in the rainforest. That is the honest picture of where the science stands. LiDAR finds, archaeologists confirm. Excavations then extract the kind of granular detail that no laser can provide. The pottery shards, the organic material for radiocarbon dating, the evidence of daily life that tells you not just the shape of the city, but how it functioned. The Minanbe discovery in June 2026 represents the first stage of a research process that will take years and possibly decades to fully develop. Future excavations are highly desirable, Sprague has said, though they would face logistical challenges, including the need for an access road requiring the reserve's authorization. For now, the city named There Is No Road remains exactly that. A place where the only way to arrive is the way Sprague's team arrived. 3 miles with machetes, 4 more on foot, through a jungle that kept the city secret for over 1,000 years and will not easily surrender the rest of what it knows. In 22 and 26, the picture that is emerging from every jungle where LiDAR has been applied is the same in its essential outline, however different the specific civilization or the specific geography. The ancient world was more populated, more organized, more architecturally ambitious, more hydraulically sophisticated, and more politically complex than any previous method of investigation ever revealed. Entire civilizations have been sitting right under our noses for hundreds of years, hidden beneath dense rainforests. LiDAR archaeology has completely transformed the game when it comes to locating these lost worlds. Using laser-based scanning, this technology digitally peels back layers of vegetation to expose pyramids, sprawling road systems, and massive urban complexes that conventional archaeological methods would never have caught. You're witnessing a golden age of archaeological discovery that's literally rewriting ancient history. A golden age. That phrase is not premature. What LiDAR has done to archaeology in the last decade, and what it is continuing to do in accelerating fashion in 2026, is the closest thing to a paradigm shift that any mature scientific field experiences. Not a refinement of existing knowledge. A fundamental overhaul of the foundational assumptions that structured the entire discipline. The jungle was never empty. The tropics were never a barrier to complexity. The civilizations that built in these environments were not primitive relatives of old world cultures, but parallel achievements of human organizational capacity, operating in difficult environments, engineering solutions that modern science is only now able to see. Menanbe is one city, one of at least 500 identified in the Calakmul Reserve alone, one of more than 60,000 previously unknown structures found in Guatemala's Maya Biosphere Reserve. One data point in a planet-wide reassessment of what the ancient human world actually looked like before the jungle took it back. Each new site helps us better understand the complexity of Maya civilization, Sprague said. More in-depth excavations are highly desirable, but they would face logistical challenges. For now, the 71-year-old archaeologist who has spent 3 decades macheting through the Campeche jungle has no immediate plans for another major project. But never say never, he told the art newspaper. Because somewhere else in the green silence of the Calakmul Reserve, in a direction that no path currently leads, another city is waiting. The laser will find it eventually. And then someone will have to take the machete and go. The forest keeps its secrets well. But the lasers keep getting better. And in 2026, for the first time in human history, the balance between what the jungle hides and what science can see is genuinely shifting, one pulse of light at a time.